And today, Black Star Line is having a conversation around it takes a village and village raising our children. I'm sorry, village schooling our children. And this is part
Hi, good
two.
afternoon, everybody.
Let's see. So just a little update about who we are. And I'd like for this to be kind of a collective. I'm Marjan, and I've been with Black Star Line since its inception, and that was in 2006. But we have grown as we are sitting here in 2020, and the family that is online is also part of the BSL family. So I'm grateful for the sharing and the contribution that you all have made. And we've seen it grow from a small group of families trying to figure out how do we raise our children, how do we educate our children in a way that affirms their identity, their culture, their humanity, and having a belief system that we can do it so swell, and not just well, but really, really good. And just feeling a sense of confidence that we could do that, maybe not on our own, but definitely as a collective. And we definitely want to get into the village. So we also have Ms. Mai Dalila, who was part of that inception. And did you want to share a few words about BSL, who we are, where we are?
No, I mean, it's just really good to be here at this point with other folks in the community that have been homeschooling, rather village schooling, that we're utilizing it in the same way. And so it's just great to be here. And we enjoy the conversation and look forward to the dialogue.
Yes. Anyone else want to share with your experience about BSL?
Yeah, I'm Candace Hightower. I've been a part of BSL for a while, since my daughter was 3. She's 13, so that's 10 years. And I have learned this is like a second family to me now. And I've grown, and they help, and BSL's helped me grow, my kids grow. And it is a village. You share with each other and learn from each other. So I really enjoy that.
Thank you. Do we have maybe time for one more voice if possible? Oh, you're on mute. There you go.
Okay, I'm trying to come in through the phone. But said, hi, this is Adasha. I'm new to the village this year. I'm glad I've found them. It's finally nice to bounce things off of, fellow tribe members on village schooling our children. But it's the collective has been nice to have, definitely.
Thank you. And as we've been doing this over the years, Dr. Mims, as we affectionately refer to as Mother Mims, recently posed a question to us around why we call it homeschooling, and then doing this heavy lifting around helping people reframe what homeschooling is in a Black Star Line approach and paradigm shift, because what we really are doing is village schooling. So last week we spoke to the fundamentals of village schooling, what it looked like, why it was done, and then this week we are looking more into the how, the nuts and bolts, the flow, the structure. And for our second centering thought, we're offering up poet Sonia Sanchez, scholar Sonia Sanchez, professor Dr. Sonia Sanchez, her quote that says, "You can't have relationships with other people until you give birth to yourself." And BSL wanted to make sure we inserted that those other people also include our children as we sit in the spaces, parents and caregivers. Yeah. So at this time, I'll ask for a second voice on that quote, just to read it out for an affirmation.
But you can't have relationships with other people, even your children or our children, until you've given birth to yourself.
Thank you. Thank you. And that quote kind of helps us frame the conversation for today. Today we'll be digging into some inquiries around what homeschooling looked like for you all, what village schooling looked like for you all. And as a little bit of housekeeping, we'll be asking folks to hold questions or put them in the chat. We're going to refer to our panelists, who I'm going to introduce. And then we'll talk about the next steps, and then we'll go actually into the questions. Did I miss anything for housekeeping? Okay.
Yep.
So I'd like to introduce you to our three panelists for this part two. We have Candace Hightower. Her homeschooling style is as such. She says, I would say my homeschooling style is based off of my child's learning styles and needs, and more of an eclectic combination of standard school curriculum, but African and Indigenous centered and non-traditional education.
Yeah.
Welcome, Candace. Thank you for joining us. And then we have Maid Dalila, and her homeschooling style is as follows. I believe in a wide exposure of activities, travel, people, and spending lots of time on areas of passion. I believe in applying a cultural and community context to everything, introducing mastery, and then challenges and rigor to what we define as the important subjects. And our last panelist is Adasha Turner, and her homeschooling style is as follows. I believe in a spiritual grounding in unconditional social emotional guidance and providing differentiated instruction during academic learning journeys. Did I get that okay, you all?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Few flavors, but welcome. Thank you. Is there anything that y'all wanted to add? We're good? Okay. So our flow is this. We are in this space where we're having part two, in which our panelists will explore a few inquiries. One is, how are they doing village schooling? We'll also find out what are some village schooling mistakes they've made, where are some barriers that they experience with village schooling, and then finally, what are some of the benefits they experience as a result of the aforementioned questions. Next week, same time, same place, we'll be having panelists explore their resources to support their village schooling. How does that flow feel for people? Okay. Okay, so let's get to it. We are going to start the inquiry with the panelists, and they'll share out, and then they'll talk amongst themselves, and we'll just move the conversation through. So again, if you have any questions that come up while you're listening to them, please feel free to put it in the chat. And if there's time left over, we will attempt to address a few of them. On the 4th, not next Wednesday, but the Wednesday afterwards, we'll be having much more of an open forum and a debrief of what came up as well, so we can go more in depth into it. So we may touch on the questions that come up at a high level and then defer to not next week, but the week after. So at this time, I would love for our panelists to engage in this inquiry. Could you tell us about how you village school? What was that experience like? If you could describe your flow and structure at any given time or throughout the course of your village schooling. So I'm gonna ask Adasha, could you start us off with your flow of village schooling?
Sure. The first thing I learned, this is my second time around village schooling. The first, I have a 25 and a 22-year-old. So what I learned with them is something that I've incorporated now is not to really fight the flow, to go with it. You know, having them get up the wee hours of the morning is not really conducive for anybody, especially the, you know, when you're trying to motivate, you know, them to be self-sufficient on their own. So it worked as we had tasks at hand and we had prizes at the end. I definitely bribed my children. It worked. I didn't have to fight with them as much. You know, it forced them to set their own schedules. They were in competition with each other. The first person who was able to finish the subject, you know, received $500. So that way they learned to pace themselves, get up and not have me being on them all the time. I was in school at the same time. So we were all in school and we were all traveling. So instead of getting up and having a fuss with them in the morning, you know, getting their clothes together and getting them in that mindset without pushing that negative energy or just putting them in a bad space and sending them off to school, they were able to get up at their own pace, set their own tone, and then get to work, you know, when it was time for them. And because they saw each other competing for that $500, it was keeping the money flowing, you know, keeping the subjects flowing, which was the hardest task for me. Like, oh, okay, they're serious, because they didn't buy anything if they did not earn it. So youngest one, it's the same thing. We have every day, she has 15 minutes of math and 15 minutes of reading, and that reading can be in any form. So she's doing a lot of virtual reality books. She's doing picture books. She's picking any book. So it's letting her really know that she has to do something, but not really being very rigorous on what it is, and being able to supply, you know, all different types of levels. Some days she feels like, you know, being advantageous and picking up big word books, which is like, oh, okay, all the dinosaur books or whatnot, but she's got them down. She now has, you know, 25. She can spell and memorize them to where it's like, I couldn't do that, but it's something that she wanted to do. So that's kind of been my flow, is making things available for her when the interest comes up that she has enough to explore on. And then if we don't, we have, you know, it's a field trip. We can expound on that. You know, it's research, or it's library, or it's, you know, let's go find something to engage. So really picking up what she's putting down on what she's interested in helps structure that flow. And then another thing I'd add quickly is that it wasn't a set Monday through Friday thing. We took advantage of a lot of the free activities that were going on, the museum Thursdays and whatnot, and we did a lot of field trip and project-based assignments, you know, based off of, you know, the resources that were available out into the community. So that helped.
That's very helpful. And I bring that up, your flexibility, if you will, that it wasn't school at home per se. And I think a lot of people, when they talk about homeschooling and what does this look like, they want to duplicate what happens in the schools inside the home. And what you're describing is a little bit of a contrast. I'm hearing this 15-minute segments, yet it's child-directed. It's based on her interests. It's based on their passions, like what motivates and inspires them, versus what I, as the adult, am telling you what to do because I said so. I'm big, you're little. So there's a shift in that, and I think that helps make other paradigm shifts for other parents around what it could look like. That is not necessarily duplicating school at home. And I know for Black Star Line, we think of the school as a level of oppression and institutionalization that is harmful for our children. So we aim to not duplicate those practices. And I'm wondering if you could speak to some of the ways you've considered your flow and structure for homeschooling that is much more village schooling based.
Yeah, and as you speak about this whole notion around school, I think that some of the conversations that we would have and some of the learnings in being in the collective is that there's a distinction between schooling and education. And although we talk about village schooling or homeschooling, it really is about trying to embrace this whole concept of education and turning it on its heels. And so I entered in it a person that I'm a community organizer by trade and by heart. I do lots of trainings, but not necessarily, and I have taught classes for adults, but didn't think of myself as a teacher per se. I approached it, the homeschooling or village schooling, in probably the same way I approached my own life. There's lots of things out there in the world to learn about and to be and do. And let's try to find that in little people style, and that is of interest. Definitely we weren't home a lot. And the way his homeschooling looked at kindergarten was very different than how it looked in the 8th grade. And it had a lot to do with proficiencies. It had a lot to do with what the emphasis was at the time, all of that kind of stuff. I think in general, I looked at, had a couple of things in my mind. I looked at homeschooling that didn't only involve the academics, it involved the arts, and it involved athletics. And I didn't privilege athletics over the arts over the academics, or the academics over the athletics. It was all the same. So never would I say, if you haven't finished your math, you're not going to taekwondo. Or if you don't, if you're not dancing, then, you can't until you finish, a reading assignment, right? I felt that they all went together. Most of the things, even at a young age, I felt, I think a majority of the things that Olu was involved in out there in the community, because we used a variety of different methodologies. He was K-12 virtual. We taught things and had teachers at Black Star Line. We did things at home. He went to different activities. Let's see, the thinking was, though, that most of it I needed for him to agree to. But some things were non-negotiable. Some things were on big or little. It just was. And so he did not choose Kumon, but I chose Kumon for him. He didn't choose K-12. I chose that for him. He actually didn't choose homeschooling, right? That was a choice I made for him, right? And that he had to live with until, we decided that to do something else. In high school, he's at a school in Baltimore, an art school in Baltimore, as a result of following his passion, right? So, but it looked like that's where the dude was going to end up. You can kind of see how folks is grooving. Didn't look like he was going to be a hippie kid, although he had hippie parents. I'm not an unschooler. His dad probably is much more of an unschooler than I am, but I'm a baby boss, so it was going to go like how I wanted to go. Let's see, I did believe in rigor in some ways. Definitely some of my internalized racism, I think, peaked its ugly head. Although this was in response to institutionalized racism, I was very much interested in him being very proficient in math. That's where Kumon comes in. That's where going to Mr. Austin's class comes in. That's where having a math tutor too comes in. That's where, K-12 came in. More so that I didn't want him to struggle and that struggle take away from his passion, right? Or understanding that particular mathematics helps with particular brain development, right? So it was more of that rather than I needed for you to be, good at math. We didn't play the grade game until he made some, decisions around what he wanted to do with his high school time. So we didn't really, that didn't matter. But doing well did matter. Efforting did matter. Being able to rise to the challenge did matter. I did also have some thoughts about, I wanted him to be proficient or doing something by the time he was 10 for over half his life. Something about who he was and how he was showing up. I wanted him to be able to say, for competence and competence level, because of his personality, I can do something. And that's where, dance came in and tap. That's where taekwondo came in. That's where swim came in. But most of the things he had to agree to. Once he agreed, I felt it was my job to hold him accountable, because I wasn't one of those folks around. You could try to do something for a couple of months and say, I don't want to do it no more. So that's how we played the game for a minute. I really appreciated having, educators like Marzan that said, he doesn't have to do everything right now, right? To kind of see and figure out what he was interested in, and try to find places in which to support that. And then once again, like I said, utilizing the gifts that were going on in our community. I haven't taught math to Olu since probably he was in first grade. I mean, if that, like he outdid me real early. But there are people there that could hold that down for me. So I appreciate, again, all those things. So yeah, that was how we played the game.
I appreciate that. And I always push back when I hear things like, I haven't taught math.
I know you say
because
that.
I'm thinking anytime you're in the car driving with your child, that's math. Like, how much time do we have to get there? Well, we have 5 blocks. That's rate times time equals distance, and just knowing that we're teaching math when we cook, when we're figuring out problems, and solving, conflicts, those are all math skills as well. And another point that I do want to amplify is Maya is spot on. We are child-centered, not necessarily child-led, but we're child-focused. And that actually brings me to Candace, and you have a very intentional structure that you use for village schooling your children. Will you talk to us about your structure that was set up intentionally for this kind of thing?
Oh, absolutely. For me, I work full time. So when I decided to homeschool my kids, I had to be very creative because I would not be there all the time to be homeschooling her, so what I did is I used the school system, the Seattle public school system, to have resources and stuff like that, and have make it easier for me to report because I was working. It made it a little easier for me because I was working to keep track because they helped with that at the school. Mm-hmm. And so what I did is when I decided to homeschool my younger daughter, she was in private school and I pulled her out. And there were other parents, Black parents there who were also unhappy. And what we decided to do is get together and put our resources together to provide to supplement what we couldn't do. So for like everyone, math is very important to me. I feel like math is the language of God to me. That's everything has numbers in it. And it's very important to me for my kids to know math. It's a language to me. So that was like the one thing I am not good at, and it's not. So I knew that for me, I was going to have to seek out help and seek people to help me with that because I didn't want her to fail because of my shortcomings in math or my blockages in math I got from going to public school. So that made me also, as an introverted person, have to reach out. And so I decided to become a teacher for Math Academy, which Mr. Austin ran. That helped me keep up with her and learn different techniques because he's very creative in how he teaches. And so I absorbed that and watched and observed and learned from him and the other teachers that were there. I also made friends with all these other educators who were there because they love these little Black kids. And those became my resources. Those people that teach all the time were there for me to help me. And that became my village. So I had parents who wanted to pull their resources together, and we had these young teachers who are still in love with kids and want to love on them and teach them. And we were able to help them while they're still in school help pay for our tutoring, or for them to, you know, when we're struggling with something, help have someone to talk to help us through things. And that was how I was able to homeschool my daughter and work full time. Um, I also had to use grandparents and cousins. Um, with the curriculum, at first, it was, you know, I wanted to keep the same as school, but that just didn't work. That doesn't work. And so I had to be flexible. So there were times that when I got off work, there were certain things that I knew I was going to have to go over with her and make sure that she understood what her assignments were, and make sure she was good too, you know, because again, I'm opening up and putting other people around her that are supposed to support us. And I want to make sure that those people are still working out for her too, because as a little person, she's still a person. And just because I feel like somebody might do something well with her, she's like, I'm not feeling that. I'm not really feeling that. And so I had to, you know, be flexible with that too. Um, I learned not to take it so hard that everything I wanted her to learn, I didn't get to. I just, you know, you just learn and grow as you do this, that you have to go with the flow. You have to go with what the child needs are, not with what you need them to do. You need, you know, because there may be something that they get real quick, and it may be something that takes a long time for them to get. And you just have to be patient and nurture it, you know. And that's what I love about homeschooling, because when I send them to school, I'm kind of out of the picture a little bit. But when it's more on me. I take it a little bit more, you know, it's a little bit more important to me too, that what they, you know, what kind of education they get, what they're being fed, what's the quality of what they're getting, you know. So I guess I hope I sometimes ramble, I'm sorry. So that's what
What I really appreciate is how you talked about, you're getting applause, I'm seeing hands go up, so this is good. But what I'm also appreciating is how you talked about how you had to adjust who you were, and how you had to pay attention to your child's emotional needs, her identity needs, you know, and being attuned to that, where we lose that ability when we solely depend on outside institutions and we don't know how to leverage our village and make sure that our children are good through that. So that village schooling includes that that emotional, that social,
and the old people are the best. Oh my gosh, the old people are the best. Like when my daughter was with her grandmother, like she's learned like so much about just life skills. Like she knows about the going to the secondhand store, you know, and and looking for the sales, and you know, math, clearance, you know, how much percentage that, you know, let me look up a coupon. I'm like, hey, I love it.
That's right. That's right. And having fun. Like it doesn't have to be drudgery.
Right.
You know, it doesn't have to be, you know, there's ways to get infuse excitement in real life. Did any of you ever set like a real rigid schedule? And if so, how did that work? For example, get up at 7, you know, be ready at 7:30, you know, ... Did either of you ever do anything to that extent? And if so, how did that work? Okay. Try. How did that work for you?
Both. When we had places to go and they understood, like, because if we missed it, we just missed it. If somebody cut up, we missed it. We're not. So when it was time for us to be on time, it was a treat. So they, you know, they would march up. They would, you know, get everything together. And it's like, oh, okay, because we didn't do it that often. So it helped, you know, in that sense. But on the days off, you know what I mean, it was more like leisure. So it was a mix of both.
Okay, thank you. May, how about you?
As I said, I'm an organizer, so there's always places we need to be in the community, and things start when they start. Yeah, we were late a lot, but it didn't mean that we weren't supposed to get up and try to get there. As he got older, one of the things I did love about homeschooling when they were young, I think we grew into it. I love the opportunity to be able to have snuggle time with my little baby. You know, in fact, that's when I put down this one preschool when we was getting in late, and the teacher had the nerve to tell Olu, why you late? And he said that, my mom said it was okay. And then the teacher said, it wasn't up to me no more. That was the last time we went to that preschool, right? So, because what's the use of having a little baby if you can't stay in the bed and snuggle with them sometimes,
Right.
Man, I'd wait all this time to have this little baby thing. You must be kidding. But so definitely grew into that. But we had things to do. We had things to do. And as he grew in particular areas of a sports competition and and the art, he had to be there when he needed to be there, and it helped me get a little bit better around punctuality. It's not always been a value of mine. In fact, I probably would, have a reputation of being late. So, but there's something about when you gotta be there for your babies, how you be stepping up your game a little bit. And so, trying to get there, even getting there a little bit early, did village school. So then we also had to pick up other children. So we're trying to get the other kids to where they need to go with us is a level of responsibility. Yes, it made for a level of, it can be stressful, but one of the things I feel he learned is how to be self-directed and to get to places not using a bell, like the bells they use in school, like in prison. That's not, it's about the reason why we were getting there is because we wanted to show up for people that we respected and care about. And because we're trying to, it's the why was different, not because we're told to because of this rigid schedule, because it meant something. It means something to us and it means something to them. So, there were times. Yeah, thank you for that.
That's very helpful because I do think the why matters, and it's not just a schedule just for the sake of having a schedule, but for the sake of relationship, for village building, for learning some character development as a part of the village schooling experience. Which actually you spoke a little bit about the barriers. Go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead.
This the other thing too, is that he had to come with me to my meetings, right? Because at Black Star Line, we aren't a bunch of rich white women that are being kind of caretaked and just be able to so we're working, we're hustling. These kids got to come and sit while I make some money so that we can have lunch, and all of that kind of stuff.
Real talk.
That lifestyle, the lifestyle is one that costs money. You still got to pay bills. And so how you have to learn to integrate that, like Candace was speaking about, is that, you have to be very creative, and I think some of us on this call just take it for granted, right? Doesn't everybody weave in, weave out? There were times in which I got up at 6 o'clock in the morning, left Olu asleep with my mom at home so that then I can get 6 hours worth of work in so I can come back at lunch, wake him up, fix something for my mom, and bring him back to my job for that remainder. You just be working it. And I'm looking at these sisters on the line, and I know the different ways in which y'all just worked it. And it just, it feels normal. So sometimes we don't speak to that. You know what I'm saying? It feels like
because what you got to do in the time. Yeah.
Do what you got to do.
Would you say that was the barrier in your reflection, or because it's probably so hard to contextualize what you had to do is what you had to do? And if not, then what would you all consider one of the most significant barriers you all experienced to your village schooling?
I think mine was going to work. I mean, when I was in a point where I had to bring my children to work, and I worked at a hospital, so they would sleep in the prayer room sometimes, and it's okay, but it was set up. And that was the thing, just having the fear, I know I shouldn't be, but this is the only way. And doing that for a while and having to constantly, yes, I want to, provide the best for my children, but that works both ways. I want to be there for them, but I have to be able to, as a single mother at that time, provide for my children. So that's where village schooling definitely helped. That was the only time I felt comfortable with leaving my children with someone else, is when they had kind of the same interest for their children. It wasn't, more like a daycare. They're just getting paid to take care of your children, and you hear all kinds of stories, but what happens with daycare, and you put so much energy into finding the right one, where it's like we've had to switch up a few times, but like finding another village mom and a village family to where, that was golden. And especially traveling a lot, it's like, man, I gotta find, that was the heartbreak. I was like, I gotta find another village family to kind of feel comfortable with, because our hours and being on call, and as my career progressed, it put more emphasis on the need of village, like quick, like we need to figure out, what's quick. But that was one of the barriers, was trying to manage all of that. But because of that, I didn't really have a lot of social life. My life was going to school, doing my residency, and raising my children as homeschooling. That was it. Everyone's like, how did you do it? And it's like, because there was nothing else being done. That was that was the routine. So as they got older, and because they started with it, you know what I mean? So as they got older, it was like they knew the routine, they knew what was up, knew, what the schedule was. In a sense, I felt like, did it make them mature a little bit more, versus everyone else? Yes and no. I just thought they were more focused. They were still silly, goofy kids, and they did some silly, goofy stuff. But, when it came to, getting things done, they were focused, and they get back to, being silly and goofy. And so that was, and traveling, it uprooted them a lot. But because I was trying to pursue my career and, like I said, maintain that balance, that was a huge barrier. And it's not, places like this and spaces like this aren't common. I appreciate what Black Star Line does in bringing it all together and putting it out there, where before it would seem like to be hidden or this taboo, that you would actually want to raise your child like this, and have that dependency on other people, versus the school system, which has that track record of failing and a lot of emotional instability, with your child. So I don't know how I would have done this in a public school, being able to achieve my goal and travel, from place to place for my residency, putting my child in and out of public schooling. They would have been a hot mess, I felt. So this was the best way to do it, and really understanding that. And another barrier, I would say, is just family support. When they don't understand it and they're used to seeing things one way, and you're doing it different, and it's like, it'd be easier if you would adjust, and it's like, you think so?
Raise your hand if you heard that one from a family member, right? Just put them in school.
I put them in school, it'd be easier. I'm like, oh gosh, no. So it'd be nice to have that kind of link throughout the U.S., where we can go visit different, villages and build that connection. But the barrier definitely is that component.
To be developed, if not already developed, just gotta find it.
That's good, girl. Let's do it.
Yeah.
I love it. What would you say your biggest barrier was, Candace?
Their dad was against homeschooling.
Say that though. Yeah. Yeah. Real talk. That's what we're here for. Yeah.
There was a barrier there. Because he felt like I was better at the education thing. He trusted me, but it was like took a lot for him to do that, but he eventually trusted, but it took a lot for him to be okay with that, because he's definitely traditional about a lot of things. And then the other one was just wanting to recreate school. That was my barrier, because at first I was trying to recreate school, just like you're going to school, but it's just a smaller group of you just going to school, and that didn't work well, and so that kept me. I think that kind of kept me from getting in the groove faster, I guess to say, of teaching her. Yeah, because it was hard, because like I said, I was working and then trying to make her, well, you're going to have to take your class at 8 p.m. and it's 45 minutes, and it's just, and she's like, what? I'm tired.
I could feel the tension. I could feel the tension as you describe, as you talk.
I had to relax.
Yeah.
Just relax.
Oh, that's good. So would you say that was possibly one of the mistakes that you experienced as well with homeschooling, or do you have something that tops that you want to share out?
My mistake is thinking I have to have a set curriculum.
Okay.
That was
okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Say more about what you mean by having a set curriculum.
Like buying a curriculum and trying to follow the exact curriculum, how they given it to you, and just really being thinking this is my guide. I have to, this is what the book says, and it's not like that at all.
Yeah. That's good. So did you buy a curriculum first before you realized that was a mistake? So tell me more. What did you buy, and what was that like? Walk us through that.
It was a curriculum. Now it has like a lot of nice resources in it, but it's a curriculum from this guy called the Disability Scholar. I followed him on Instagram, and he had created a curriculum for Black children. And so I got it, and he has one from kindergarten all the way to 12th grade, and he has like lists of links to do assignments and what to talk about. And it's not what sheets you pull out and you do this or anything like that, but it's more of this is what the kids should be learning in the first grade. This is what they need to learn in the second grade, and I was starting like, oh my God, how am I going to get them to learn all this? And I was teaching etymology, and I'm like, it's just, you try to do all this stuff, etymology and all this stuff. And it's like, it's just too much. And I just got overwhelmed, and I felt like I have to put her back in school. But then I took a step back and kind of was like, okay, look, you can do this, because I felt like some of the teachers that my daughter had weren't very intelligent, and they, they, if they could do it, I was like, I know I can do this, so I just had to keep reminding myself of that part. But I just, I like pulling things from different things now, instead of like, this is the curriculum on this, and this is what we're going to do. I like to pull things from different places or from experiences and try to make them teachable moments, or, just honestly, the conversations we have, we talk a lot, we talk so much more than we did when they were in school about just a lot of things, what they're thinking, what they want to do, goals, things like that. Instead of just, it says here, you got to learn your math, this and math, kind of let them, but some of that stuff she already knew. Some of that stuff she didn't know. So I had to talk to her, right?
Yeah, that's how you get information. Yeah. Honestly, that is one of the best ways of assessing our children, is having real conversations, having deep dialogue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Instead of the multiple choice tests that you get, that people end up looking in the back of the book anyway for.
Exactly. And they know about Grammarly, and they know about asking Google the math questions.
Right. So what do we really do with that assessment? Yeah. Talk to your children. That's a good one. Yeah, thank you. Maida, Dasha, what were some of those mistakes? What had happened was.
I know. I think one of the things I was, clear, or, folks who ask you, homeschooling, like, what's wrong with you? I remember this one sister, what's wrong with you, girl? Just put them in school. What's wrong with you? And homeschool and all that kind of stuff. So those kinds of things kind of rolled off my back. Like, pretty much I was in a really good, we're in Black Star Line, we're in our own little world, being able to be in that village. I think my biggest mistake was that I too late did not take into consideration how he was spending this counterculture life of sorts. Like maybe not enough dialogue with him about the whys.
Okay.
Right? He's watching us organize. He's doing all of that kind of stuff, but and he's hearing the pros and that kind of stuff. But he's the kind of guy that I facetiously talk about in like Family Ties, like we're the parents, and he's Alex Keaton, like got hippie parents, like I said, and then it's like, what's wrong with y'all? And that's a little extreme, but definitely he's being on the outside was not a comfort for him. It mattered. It mattered that after a while that I remember he used to, as he got older and was really self-directed, I'd be able to take him to the library, Douglas Truth, and then when I was kind of working a little half a job, and then come pick him up. And so after a while, he didn't want to go to the library because he would be there when the other kids would be getting out of school, and they would ask, why are you there? Right? So he didn't like all of that, right? And so definitely, trying to, have more conversations with him about the why. And as I said, I love being in this environment at the Baltimore School of the Arts because there's so many more families in which homeschooling was what they did. And he found his tribe here when you're talking about tribe. So then he doesn't feel like, because that matters to him, but definitely had to do some work with him, which was more important than math, more important than all this other reading and stuff around how do you stand in your own truth? How do you walk your own walk, that kind of stuff. And appreciated being able to see that character building need early so we can work on it before he's out there at 18 going with what's cool and shiny, right? Because that might be where, we know that's my baby. So I think that was a mistake. Wish I had played more, just played a little bit more, laughed a little bit more, in those times in which it got hard, and expected a little bit more. Because he had more.
Expected more?
And expected a little bit more. All of that. And all of that is possible. Again, I wouldn't trade the journey for anything. He's better for it. I truly believe that. And he's all right with it. He's all right with it. So
yeah. Thank you. Okay, how about you?
There are many. Learning more now. I have the little ones. My oldest are coming out of the woodwork and stuff I just didn't remember. And one of the things my daughter said, "Oh, Mom, you're my best friend." And my son was like, "She's not your friend, she's your mom." And I'm like, "Wait, hold on."
Time out.
I needed to love him a little bit more. And then because there was a way and I was able to navigate academics, and achieve my goals, I put that, have a degree, about the time you're 18, like you guys could be, what do you want to do? Let's do it. And I pushed them when it came to that. My daughter started school college when she was 13, and my son when he was 16. So when they turned 18, they were like, okay, we did this for you, and it wasn't anything bad. There wasn't any negative, there wasn't a negativity, or it wasn't harsh, but that's all they had been kind of like shown, is that you guys can start college. Like what's going on? What do you guys want to do? So that when talking about that social development, that social emotional development, I was so, even though I unschooled and homeschooled, I still put academia and that degree, at that level. We could just achieve it quicker. You know what I mean? So let's just do this, get it out of the way while we're not dealing with so much homework during high school. You know what I mean? And kind of like, you don't have to, so it doesn't exist type of thing. And it's like, well, maybe I want to explore that. And like being open, completely open. I think that I was always teacher mom, or I was always, I didn't think I was rigorous, but when I see how they were just like, let Naima play, and I'm like, that's all this child does is play. What are you talking about? Or you weren't like that with us. And it's like, I did that. We're having fun this way. And one thing that I did keep this time around was the Kumon and the consistency with that. So it's something where she's been reading and doing math since she was 2. So I already know where she's at. So, when they're talking about testing, we're like, we're good. You know what I mean? We're going to go to the park. We're going to chill. We're going to spend our time at the museum. You know what I mean? And she's picking up, solar systems, and we're getting into a lot of other things, reading and math every day, and she's able to excel. So I'm not looking at her like, I'm about to put you in college right now, girl. Like, you don't even know, and it's different. So my mistake is like, yeah, we can aim for pounds. And it was Monday, and I was just like, I'm about to lose my mind. Okay, we're in Arizona. We moved here so we can do Embry-Riddle. Like, that was the goal. You told me that was the goal. And when she dropped that bomb, and she was like, well, I'm 17 and a half. I'm going to be 18. I want to be a model. And so that was a lesson that all I could do was pray. Please don't hurt her that bad. I know this is a lesson she's got to learn on her own and not teach her. Just please bring her back in one piece. You know what I mean? She's been in a bubble her whole life. She's been traveling, her whole life. And she's telling me she's bought a Greyhound ticket to go to Chicago, for an international show at 17 and a half. And that was a learning experience for her, but it was also a huge one for me as well. And long story short, she got out there, she was scared on the Greyhound. She got out there, she got dressed up for 3.5 hours and had to sit in a full gown. And she couldn't get a car, she couldn't get a hotel. She didn't think about those things. And so luckily I had an auntie that was 95 years old, still driving, pick her up in a shaky car. And she was scared the whole way, driving over the bridge to get a place. And then once they finally paid my daughter, she bought a ticket and came home, and we never heard of modeling again. But if I would have pushed that issue with her, you know what I mean? She would have been out there trying to be, with Tyra Banks. You know what I mean? Because everybody, they looked at her and they saw a model. And I'm like, that's all you see because she's tall? Like, that's crazy. Like, this child is in aeronautical engineering. So when she, I've been defending that. And when she said it just to try it out, I was like, girl, whatever. Okay, go on. Just please.
That is beautiful.
I love that story. Thank you, girl.
That is so good.
Time, because we just like, modeling, huh? So when we hear people say that, I was like,
I know. I got a story for you, huh?
Because
it's actually fantastic.
And they didn't even think about, ask her parents. They didn't think about, are you going to be okay when you get here? And that's something she had to learn. And her father was dying, and she was she was hysterical, and no one even checked on her. And that's the thing. It's like going, in the love that I was trying to instill in her and protect her until she had to be out there on her own. So people tell you there's anything,
That is so awesome. And I love how each of you all spoke to like the other side, coming out on the other side of that mistake, what the learnings are, what the beauty was of it, and that it wasn't so daunting. And I think part of this village schooling experience, we get nervous that we're going to do as, some of our village people have said, you're going to mess with your kid? Why you want to do that? And to know that through all these kinds of mistakes, and some that we haven't even talked about or scratched the surface on, that they come out okay, right? And not just okay, but beautiful, right? With a lot of learning. And so if you all would just take a moment and give us 3 words to describe your child, that would be super fantastic and wonderful. We can close the conversation about the how, the structure of village schooling, what it looked like, and that it's not all bad, even when it is, a hiccup or a moment. So what are some words you would say to describe your child or children as a result of all of that structure, unstructure, lessons, mistakes, opportunities?
I think my kids are confident because they're able to, to, in their mind, organize what's important to them and really go out there and get it and know that they don't have to ask, permission for a lot of things. They understand that they have to and must respect their elders, even though they don't agree with them, and they need to be able to reframe that in order to communicate effectively. And that was my son is like the great debater. You know what I mean? And so it's one of the struggles, actually, because it's like, man, he's got to answer for everything, and he's right. And it's your child, and you're trying to really gear him, but he can definitely articulate it. But and I think that, you know, to be confident, to be able to articulate, and both of them have done well for themselves in whatever they wanted to do.
Thank you. Candace, you want to go next?
Well, I have 2 kids. They're different. my oldest child, 3 words to describe my oldest child would probably be responsible, a producer. She likes to move things forward, and she can be very pushy when she wants something to be done or come to fruition. She's very pushy about it, and she's creative. She's very creative.
Yeah.
Very creative child. And her little sister, I see Chris is a very generous person, very direct child. She always says what she's thinking, and very direct. And I like that about her. I know for a lot of people, they don't like kids like that, but I do. I encourage it. I try to help her contain it because she's a child around adults, because it can bother people, but I don't try to smother that out of her. I love that about her. And I said old soul because she says things sometimes, and I'm like, what the hell? Where did that come from?
That's you.
So, that's how.
And you're like, yeah, okay, yeah. That's it.
Yeah.
I love it. And they are lovely children too.
Thank you.
No,
Yeah.
those are my girls.
My girl. Yeah, Candace definitely has to share her children with us. So
Right.
They need aunties.
Great kids.
indeed. And how about you, Miss May?
The 3 words I have down is for my son, 16. I would say he's bright. I would use that to describe him. I would describe him as determined. Seems to have that inside of him. I remember when he was a little boy and we're at a community meeting and the grown-ups are asking questions and he's trying to answer. And I'm thinking it's not a child's place. And he turns back, "Don't hold me back, Mommy, don't hold me back." And I think he's been saying that pretty much his whole life, like in one way or another, "Don't hold me back." But he's also yummy. I think Olu is yummy. He's my yummy. And so, and even now, I appreciate the homeschooling because we were able to bond. That bonding has taken us through some hard knockout dragouts. So to find our footing again. So I'm grateful for that time with him.
That is awesome. Thank you all for sharing your stories, your experience. It's been delightful. I'm looking forward to next time and talking more about the resources that you all found and what that was like, right? To make these yummy children who are confident, you know, respectful with their elders, and, you know, just amazing children. Very, very appreciative of being in a space with you all, and thank you for sharing. And at this time, I will close this out formally with Meta and just wishing that each of us are safe, wishing that each of us are healthy and happy, wishing each of us are free from fear and pain, and wishing each of us may be at peace. And I thank you all for being here. And I'd like to formally close this out. And then we'll hang around for about another few minutes to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marjan. Thank you, panel.